Madison Championships. Hi everybody, I'm Brian Drever, and along with Dave Chauner, we're ready to bring you the second and final night of bicycle racing here at the track they call the Silent Speedway. Dave, we've got some of the best riders in the world, certainly the best in this country here tonight. What can we expect for this second night of racing?
I think tonight's racing, Brian, is going to be really exciting. Last night we had a very, very close battle with all the teams. Because it's 2 nights of racing, they held back a little bit last night, but tonight we've talked to some of the riders earlier, and they're really going to open it up, and I think we're going to see them going to try and steal laps, make the pace really, really hard, and it's very close going into tonight's competition, so it should be a really good show.
We have 2 sprinters in the lead right now, and do you think that maybe is going to change? The hard riders are going to come to the front now?
We talked to Singleton and Halsey, who are in the lead by virtue of their great sprinting last night, and it's going to be very tough for them to hold on to the lead because the stronger riders are really going to be putting the pressure on, and I think they're going to have some difficulty tonight, but should be very exciting.
Well, there you have it, and a lot of action yet to come right here on Sports America, so stick around.
The lights are on, the crowd eagerly awaiting the second night of racing here in the 1980 Madison Cup Championships at the Lehigh County Velodrome in Pennsylvania, one of 3 such bicycle racing tracks in the eastern part of the country, one of a dozen or more active tracks in the United States itself. This particular one, a 333 1/3 meter oval, banked 27 degrees, about a 1/5 of a mile around the track, and we have a great schedule of events on tap for tonight.
Mixed bag tonight, Brian. We've got scratch races, sprints, Madisons, a whole series of events, 8 events to test just about every kind of cyclist possible. Things for sprinters, endurance riders. It's going to be a great show.
And perhaps the favorites in the competition, team number 1, wearing the stars and stripes, the national Madison champions, Danny Van Hout from Chicago, Roger Young from Detroit. From across the pond, Sean Wallace and Hugh Cameron, a mixture of youth and age and experience. That's team number 2. Team number 3, Halsey and Singleton, leading after the first night of competition, a pair of sprinters and a couple of guys not given much chance to win. Gordon and Joseph from Guyana, the only 2 riders in this competition to have actually competed in the Olympic Games in Moscow. Team number 5, Pran and Walton. Pran, a defending champion with a different partner last year. Walton on the Lehigh County Velodrome team, one of the top riders, a Canadian Olympian. Heyman and Donaghy, another 2 of the favorites. Heyman, a Canadian pro champion. Donaghy, an outstanding rider in the United States. Deem and Nitz, another strong duo. Paul Deem and Leonard Harvey Nitz, national team pursuit champions together. Rudder and Bodycomb. Rudder, a local rider. Bodycomb from Georgia. 2 other young, very strong riders with a good chance of being a factor. From Ireland, McDonough and McCormick. McDonough a few generations away from the old country. McCormick, a real live Irishman from Dublin. Pearson and Jackson. Pearson, a defending champion. Ian Jackson, one of the very most favorite riders in this competition. He's from Australia. Mike Mole and Scott Hembry. Mole, a former national Madison champion. Hembry punctuated an outstanding season with a victory in the individual points race this year. Alvord, a local rider, and his experienced partner, Pat Gelano. These 2 could be a factor in the race. And from the Austro-Daimler squad, Barney Baxter and Ian Jones, top riders on the open road, untested here at the Lehigh County Velodrome as yet, though. And Ed Slaughter, a runner-up last year with his partner, one of the most underrated riders in the country, Robbie Geisler, a local boy born and bred right here on this bicycle racing track.
Brian, we've got a unique scoring system tonight. Every one of the events that the riders compete in tonight scores points for the teams. You can see the overall standing still very tight after 1 night of racing, but each one of the events that we're going to be seeing tonight, the sprints, the missing outs, the Madisons, all count towards the overall point accumulation for teams. The top 8 teams are listed on your screen. The leading team, Singleton and Halsey, very, very strong riders. We're going to see a lot of them tonight. And all the riders score points for their teams, as I mentioned before, in each one of the events.
The riders are on the line right now. You see them lining up there for the competition. They'll hold on to the fence. They'll roll off and be given the starter's pistol. There it goes. And we're off in the first of the races. It's a 5-lap scratch race for one of the members of each team. Rolling off to an early lead there is Barney Baxter of the Citius Austro-Daimler team. As we said before, he's an untested rider on the track.
That's right, Brian. He's primarily considered a road rider, but a very, very strong one. doesn't like to sit back in the back with the sprinters, and we can see an interesting thing develop. He's not going to wait around for the last lap and go out there on his own. We see that quite often. I guess we have seen it quite often at the velodrome here.
It's true. A new rider will come out there, and his first tendency is to just go right out there and try to go as fast as he can and win, especially in a short race like this, only 5 laps. But you can see the field coming up from behind now. They're just going to keep him in sight, maybe, let him sit out there. Maybe the more experienced ones are saying he can't last for 5 laps at this pace. We have the strength of the field. We have strength in numbers. We're just going to sit back here and wait for the right time to make that move.
It's a pretty significant lead he's got there, Brian. I'll tell you, Baxter isn't going to wait around, and if he can get a big enough lead, they're not going to be able to catch him.
Coming in now, it's going to be about halfway point, about 2.5 laps to go, I would expect. And now on the backstretch side of the course, you see him coming into the home stretch. Baxter still with a good lead. You can see he's looking over his shoulder, sort of checking out where the other riders are, and where they are, in fact, is much closer to him now as they cross the finish line there with 2 laps to go.
Field is picked up. They've caught him, and now another move comes off the top. That looks like Paul Pearson around the top. He's known as the animal here at the Lehigh County Velodrome because of his aggressive style.
Pearson out there with a lead now. This could be the right time, as we said. There's the bell signifying 1 lap to go in the bike race, and Pearson with a lead out in the front. He makes a last check over his shoulder. He looks back behind and sees one more rider. It's Joseph of Guyana. Remember, these are the riders that competed in the Olympics, and Joseph now, a good sprinter, goes over the top of Pearson now with half a lap to go to the finish line. Pearson is in the front, his second spot rather. He's been passed by Joseph, but Pearson's going to hang on, it looks like. He's going to keep going, and Joseph appears to be fading a little bit. Pearson's going to come around. He's going to try to get back at him. This is very unusual. Pearson comes around a second time to win the first of the 5-lap races.
Good. Let's take a look at that and replay, Brian. The Guyanan rider out in front, as you mentioned, Pearson catching him. They're on the last lap now. Paul Pearson, who usually goes very, very long in these events. That means he starts his sprint with a whole lap to go. He did that. The Guyanan passed him, and now Pearson is coming back on him to try and go for the victory. And it looks like, as we saw earlier, he's able to do it. You can see the riders behind him going very, very fast, trying to almost catch him, but not able to do it before the finish. Pearson the winner.
Here we see Pearson the winner on the left, and his partner Ian Jackson will now be in the second of these 5-lap scratch races, scoring points for their team. We're already underway in that second heat. As we look at the standings or the results from the first one, the winner, you see Pearson scoring 7 points for his team. Joseph holding on for 5 points on his team. The Can-Am Pro team, the leaders going into the second night of competition, coming in third. Schwinn USA, the National Madison champions, 4th spot there. The team from Great Britain coming in 5th. And now you see the overall standings reflected with the addition of those points. The Can-Am Pro team riders still in the lead with 59 points. Schwinn USA in 2nd spot. The Lehigh County Velodrome team in 3rd spot, and the team of Pearson and Jackson, who just won that race, in 4th spot overall right now.
On the track, it's well into this second scratch race. Up there in the lead is Scott Hembry, who's partnered by Mike Mole. Hembry, a very, very strong rider from California. We've seen him in action all over the country. We do, of course, Brian, as you know, have an international class field here. Riders from England, from Australia, several foreign countries, as well as Americans. We're going to be seeing a lot of action from them tonight. But right now on the track, it's Scott Hembry in the black jersey of the All-California team.
Team Pacific, Scott Hembry up there in front. These bikes that the riders ride are single-speed, fixed-gear bikes. They have no brakes. They cannot coast. There's only one point to make, and that is that they just go. That's the only thing that they do. There's the bell now, signifying the final lap of the second 5-lap heat. Hembry is being passed by Sean Wallace of Great Britain. Right behind him is Pat McDonough, riding for the AMF team. His partner, the Irishman McCormick. Now you see, and the front, it's still Wallace of Great Britain, followed by McDonough. McDonough makes a move out of the saddle now. Great acceleration by Pat McDonough, a former junior national sprint champion, and he goes over the top, rounding the turn into the final stretch. But on the outside, it looks like Halsey, the cash man, the admiral, the man they call the admiral, the U.S. pro champion, Cliff Halsey, is going to come around and take this second 5-lap scratch race on the track right there. Halsey, the winner.
Let's take a look at that replay, Brian. You can see the young Englishman Wallace has gone out to an early lead. Pat McDonough tucked right in behind his wheel, now moving out, seeing that he's within striking distance of the finish, taking the chance of pulling out from behind that wheel, which offers him the protection of sitting behind another rider. McDonough now making his bid for victory, but Cliff Halsey, the man to watch in this one, coming way over the top, 3 high. You can see him up in the blue jersey. Cliff Halsey coming through as he normally does, is in a event like this. He hangs back, holds off as long as he can, sits on that wheel for as long as he can, and then uses the final finishing kick that he has so devastatingly to win the event. You can see Halsey clearly the victor by about a bike length.
Now, these riders stay right on the track, and you can see riders circling slowly on the outside as we look at Cliff Halsey on the left, the winner of that race. And the riders stay right on the track, and they'll go right into the 50-lap Madison, which is the next event. All the riders, as we said, are on the track. You'll see them making exchanges one by one. Now, the races up to now have been for individuals, but now you're going to see how they relay each other into the race, and you'll be seeing a lot more of this as we go into that 50-lap Madison. Here are the results from that second scratch race. Halsey, the winner of it for his team, the Can-Am Pro Riders, picking up 7 more big points. Lehigh County Velodrome's Hugh Walton coming in second spot. And now the overall standings reflected by the addition of those points. The Can-Am Pro team still leading going into this 50-lap Madison, and it should be a great race. Dave, just exactly what is a Madison? Let's explain that.
It's an interesting race, Brian, and it tests all the abilities of a rider. Usually these teams are paired with a sprinter and an endurance man. Only one rider is actually racing at a time. His partner is riding slowly around the top of the track, riding what we call relief. When the rider that's in the race comes around to his partner, the partner will drop in and be relayed into the race. And the partner that was just in the race goes up and rides slowly around the top. It keeps the pace very, very fast. It's like a relay. You can see now Bruce Donaghy throwing in his partner Ron Heyman there at the front of the field. And as I mentioned before, when the rider that's in the field comes around to his partner, the partner drops in, the racer throws him in, and then goes up and rides relief.
The technique of the race is what Dave's been talking about, but the way that they score, they continue to score points in sprints that are scattered throughout the 50-lap event. In this race, every 10 laps, they'll be sprinting for points, just like the points that you've seen them scoring in the 5-lap scratch races earlier. Those points will be added all throughout the evening to determine an overall winner of this 1980 Madison Cup Championship. On the track right now, we see Ron Heyman of the Panasonic Shimano team out there in the front as he hears the bell now. 1 lap to go for the first sprint in this 50-lap Madison. He relays his partner Bruce Donaghy in. Donaghy, the sprinter of the two, and Donaghy goes into the race now. You can see all the riders tucked in quite close behind him there. On his inside is Danny Van Hout of the National Championship team in the Stars and Stripes. Donaghy gives a big wide move to Singleton there in that turn. It could be construed as an illegal move, perhaps. And Singleton, though, just very simply the fastest man in the Western Hemisphere. There's not much Donaghy can do now. It's going to be Singleton winning that first sprint of this race.
Let's take a look at that, Brian. That was a really exciting sprint. The first one of the Madison, as we said earlier. But here's the way it worked out. Ron Heyman throws his partner Bruce Donaghy in at the front of the field. This is with 1 lap to go now. They're crossing the line with 1 to go. Gordon Singleton still about 4 or 5 bike lengths off. Bruce Donaghy in control of the situation right now. You can see he's at the front looking under his arm to see where the other riders are, occasionally over his shoulder. He sees Singleton coming very fast, tries to impede his forward progress by moving him way up to the fence, but Singleton, a little bit faster than Dirty Tricks, able to still come around Bruce Donaghy, and you can see the speed and power of the Canadian National Sprint Champion Gordon Singleton overtaking Donaghy as they come out of the last turn. It's really no contest for Singleton. Gordon Singleton, one of the outstanding riders in the world. There he is on the right, very powerfully muscular rider. He's a silver medalist in the World Kilometer Championships last year. If he'd have gone to Mexico, he was picked to be a medalist in the Moscow Olympics. Gordon Singleton, considered by anyone's standards one of the best riders in the world.
Here's the results from that first sprint. You see Singleton, the winner, picking up 5 more points for his team. Donaghy picks up 3, and Hembry there coming in 3rd spot picks up 2 points, and the team of Bodycomb and Rudder picking up the single point for 4th. And the overall standings reflected again. The addition of the points shows Can-Am Pro team still out in front, way out in front there with 71 points, and that's the reason that they've been out in front so long, is that sprinting ability of Halsey and Singleton. Singleton winning points for his team right there, and now Halsey on the track in the lead of the field, shadowed closely, as we've seen for quite a while now, by that Stars and Stripes team of Young and Van Hout, the national champions. Now, they are one of the teams that were expected to try to take a lap in this race. They're down on points, but they could still win the race if they were able to steal a lap from the rest of the field.
That's right, Brian. If all the points are out the window, if they can make swift, fast exchanges and gain the distance that they need to come all the way around. Now, let's take a look at one of these exchanges. Here's the Panasonic Shimano team. You notice the hand sling. It actually slows down the rider that's in the field and gives an acceleration to the rider that's going into the race. That's the relay push. And oftentimes, they'll exchange a couple of words, as you just saw Donaghy and Heyman do there, just to perhaps discuss tactics or what they're going to do, ease it up, get back to the back, whatever it is.
Pause for a moment for conversation, if you will. Well, back to the race. As we see still in the racing action there, it's Heyman just after that exchange is in the lead, but now he's being overtaken by that black jersey Team Pacific. It looks like Mike Mole, the captain they call him. Interesting nicknames among some of these riders. He's being followed very closely by Hugh Walton of the Lehigh County Velodrome team, and behind him it's Donaghy once again of the Panasonic Shimano squad, and the big teams are starting to move to the front.
You'll notice, I'm sure people that haven't seen bike racing for the first time, they'll notice that the riders stay pretty much closely behind one another in a long line. And one of the things that you see them do is fight for that wheel in front of them. That's so they can sit in and take advantage of the front rider's slipstream. Brian, they're coming into the final lap on this next sprint.
We've heard the bell there, as we said, signaling the last lap of the race going into this sprint right now. And out in front, it's Tom Prenn of the Lehigh County Velodrome team. These guys are trying to make a run at the leaders right now. Prenn and Walton, one of the very strong teams. Prenn, a defending champion, he's way out in front of the rest of the field right now. It looks like they've made the right move at the right time. Here you see the race for second coming up behind. Prenn easily going to take this sprint, but look at that close finish there for second spot.
Let's take a look at that one again. Tom Prenn, who's a long-distance man, he's actually raced in many of the toughest road races throughout the world, is trying to outdistance the sprint riders, and you can see he got away with it this time. He moved way out in front, and the close race is there for second. And there's Tom Prenn on the left with his partner Hugh Walton. Prenn, again, a member of the 1980 Olympic team and one of the best endurance riders that we have in the United States.
And here are the results you see from sprint number 2. The Lehigh County Velodrome team there picking up the 5 points. Tom Prenn, and added to their total, has now moved them into second spot. And we have quite a few international riders here, and we should mention that. And earlier, Dave talked with Alan McCormick from Dublin, Ireland.
Alan, you're primarily a road rider. You've ridden a lot of the top stage races all across the world, and you're finding now track racing a little bit different for you. What do you think of the racing here at Trexlertown, and particularly the Madison event?
Well, last night's race on Saturday, or Friday night, was my first Madison ever. So it took me about 10 laps to get used to the swinging, the hand slings. But I kept getting blocked in on the inside of the track all the time because it's just a lack of inexperience, you know. But I found I was strong enough to hold with the riders. So we're in 6th position at the moment, so which is not bad for our first ride.
And it's interesting to know they're still in 6th spot. Not bad. And coming out, we're now 4 laps to go to the next point sprint. Alan McCormick, just as colorful as the rainbow jersey he's wearing out there right now. Out in front, the Lehigh County Velodrome team. Tom Prenn, shadowed closely there by Ian Jackson of Team Alpine, going in to relay his partner. A nice hand sling exchange there you see, and a brief word exchanged as well. Prenn is out in front. He swings up, leaving Pearson to take a turn, and sneaking into the picture on the left-hand side there, Team Pacific, always present. That's Scott Hembry, the individual points race national champion. There you see Pearson signaling, looks like he's going to swing up. He signaled with his arm there. These riders understand these little subtle signals, and they're actually working together right now for the common good of those 3 or 4 teams that are out in front of the field.
That's right, Brian, and they are conserving their energy a little bit too coming into this sprint. They don't want to sprint out a little bit too soon for fear of wearing themselves out, because they do save a lot of energy by sitting in behind a lead rider. They actually exert about 15% less energy than the leader and maintain the same speed by tucking in behind her. Coming into the last lap now.
There's the bell signifying 1 lap to go for the next sprint. And down the backstretch they go, or in the home stretch here now with Hembry in the lead. It's Hembry out in front. Mike Mole now actually has been exchanged, and he is representing Team Pacific. Over the top goes Walton from the Lehigh County Velodrome team. They have been slowly inching up in the standings, taking over into 2nd spot now, ahead of the Schwinn USA national champions. Down the backstretch they go, led by Cameron of Great Britain. It's Hugh Cameron in the lead right now, coming around the outside. Mike Mole in Team Pacific, and it looks like Mole held off in a very close one there to win that 3rd sprint of this 50-lap Madison.
That was a really close one. Let's look at it in the replay. You can see the Team teams all bunched tightly together, positioning themselves for that sprint. Each rider trying to figure out the position of best advantage where he can strike to the finish line. And it's Mole in the black jersey now in second spot. Remember, won that sprint. You can see him starting to move out on the outside, coming out of the final turn, timing his effort just right, giving a tremendous kick to the line, accelerating his bike past the second place man to win by about a quarter of a wheel. Great sprint by Mole. There he is on the left, a Californian who's distinguished himself throughout the country in Madison racing.
But we have riders down on the track now. During that sprint, Dave, we had a crash, an accident here, and we see Ian Jones there with his bike in shambles, and Barney Baxter, the two riders from the same team, down on the track and with their equipment heavily damaged. Let's see if we can't pick up what happened in this sprint here.
I think we can see him back in the back of that field. We'll spot the riders that actually had the crash. There they are, the Citius Austro-Daimler team of Jones and Baxter coming in at the tail end of the field. You can see Jones grabbing his partner Baxter by the hand. Instead of slinging him forward, he actually pulled his hand around, didn't let go in time, and Baxter is down. Baxter sliding, a very, very hard fall on the pavement, but probably their equipment was damaged more than they were.
The injured rider is Barney Baxter of the Austro-Daimler team. And Dave, equipment failures and accidents are a big part of bicycle racing. And the responsibility when something like that happens, the responsibility for equipment goes to a team manager, a man like Heinz Walter of Panasonic Shimano. Neutralize the race, and they're talking about what to do. Let's see if we can pick up their conversation.
Track now? Yeah, but he's going to have to be assigned because they got to get a rear wheel for Baxter. So what's his name? Jones?
Okay. Okay. Baxter's getting a new rear wheel. We're going to assign Jones to a man. Tell Al to assign Jones to somebody, and we'll start the race, okay? We're not going to wait for Baxter. Let's go.
Now, Dave, what exactly are they doing here? Artie has said that they're not going to wait for Baxter, and they've assigned Jones to somebody.
What happens when, Brian, when one member of the team is out of the action, the remaining partner will stay in the race, but he is supposed to key his swinging in and out of the field with another team that's on equal laps or close to the point standings with him. So that's what Artie was asking of the other officials, was to assign a team that Jones is to watch going in and out of the field.
And here are the results of that sprint, marred a little bit by the crash, but we hope that the two riders are going to be up and back in the action. Team Pacific winning it. The Lehigh County Velodrome continuing their upward march, beating the Schwinn USA team. And you can see it's reflected in the overall standings. The leaders still Can-Am Pro team, the Lehigh County Velodrome team moving up after they had already moved into second spot. Back to the racing action here now, and waiting for that restart. We saw the riders getting a signal with 1 lap to go for the restart. Now the gun is up. The chief referee's gun is in the air, indicating we will have a restart of the bike race with 19 laps to go. 19 laps to go now in the bike race, and out in front, Team Pacific always present. And it looks like the AMF team in the rainbow jersey there, you talked to McCormick, he said he's trying to find himself in the race, and it looks like he has found himself because they're starting to be a factor in the competition now, sitting right there in second spot.
Definitely, Brian, and a guy like McCormick is one that you really got to watch out for because he will do everything he can to try and outdistance the other riders. He's not known as a sprinter. He is one of the top endurance men in the country. His tactic, along with his partners, Pat McDonough, is to try and get out there and perhaps steal a lap on the rest of the field. In fact, that's the only way they could carry off a win in this race, was if they were to gain the distance on the rest of the field.
The situation seems to be that we have so many teams that are strong, and that really has played into the hands of the sprinting team of Halsey and Singleton, in that they've been able to pile up the points, but nobody has made a serious bid for a lap, and even if a serious bid has been made, it's quickly been neutralized by the other strong teams.
That's exactly right, Brian. It is very much a sprinter's race here at the Lehigh County Velodrome, and that's typical of what happens in a race like this, where there are many sprint riders of pretty near equal ability. They'll watch each other very, very carefully, and if one team that's very strong will try and go off the front, all the others will try to neutralize the action.
Right there, you see Pren of the Lehigh County Velodrome team making what could be construed as a bid to try to get away from the field, and he's looking for perhaps the right combination of teams to help him. And in this situation right now, he's got McCormick from the AMF team and Cameron from the Great Britain team, teams that are not high up in the standings, but also because they're not high up in the standings, they probably aren't strong enough to be able to get away from the field. And the field right now, at least for the rest of these teams, seems to be Singleton and Halsey trying to get rid of those two sprinters in order to be able to take this race for themselves.
That's true. That's the way the endurance men have to do it. We're also seeing in here some really good bike handling, Brian. I'm seeing the exchanges in traffic there. That takes a tremendous amount of experience and ability. And you can see they slide in and out, just missing those wheels by centimeters in order to stay on their bikes and keep close behind the slipstream of another rider.
They'll be setting up for another sprint here coming up very shortly. We see the Lehigh County Velodrome team moving up to the front there. Pat McDonough now has taken his turn at the front in that rainbow striped jersey there. Behind him is young Sean Wallace of Great Britain, and a truly international field of riders, as you said. And now we have a move over the top. It looks like Gelano, Pat Gelano from the team Atlantic there, partnered by young Jimmy Alvord. And Gelano, this could be one of his patented last gasp efforts here, a really long sprint that's marked his style over the years.
Absolutely. Gelano is the master of the long attack. He's really proven many times that he can do this, and he's thrown his partner Jimmy Alvord in.
Alvord is a local boy, and the crowd here really loves him. They call him the Little Beaver. He's a little guy, a small fellow, but very compactly built, tremendous power and speed, and it's only hope now that he can hold on. Out there, Gelano has given him a great lead. Jimmy Alvord, the Pennsylvania State Sprint champion, with a lap to go now, way out in front of the field, and he's given it everything his little heart can handle right now. But coming out of the field is a tough man to beat, and that's Hembry from Team Pacific in that black jersey. And look at there, slow exchange by Gelano and Alvord, and Hembry just went right over the top of that slow exchange. Hembry now looks like he's on his way to winning this point sprint here with 10 laps to go in this first 50-lap Madison, and he does.
Great sprint by Hembry, but really setting the tone for it, as we see in the replay, was Pat Gelano and his little partner Jimmy Alvord, the Pennsylvania State champion. Now we can see that move here in the replay. Over the top, up on the left-hand side of the screen is Pat Gelano, member of the 1972 Trinidad Olympic team, now living in New York City. And Gelano, as you can see from the bandages in his arms and legs, had a spill earlier in the race, but it doesn't prevent him at all from using these kinds of aggressive tactics. In fact, Gelano, as we mentioned earlier, is the master of the surprise attack with 2 or 3 laps to go. He's trying it again. He's done it many times. Perhaps the thing that hurt him in this effort is the fact that Jimmy Alvord, his partner, is primarily a pure sprinter and doesn't really have the endurance of Pat Gelano. Now there's Gelano throwing in Alvord, a well-timed exchange with 1 lap to go. Alvord out of the saddle trying to sprint for that whole last lap all by himself. He usually has to come off a wheel to make an effective victory in the sprint. Now they're coming into the last turn. Alvord's still out there. He'll be looking for his partner Pat Gelano. In fact, he's probably pretty desperate right now, Brian, wondering, where is Gelano? I need some help. And I guess that is 1 lap to go now. He's looking for Gelano. The field is coming up fast. Hembry leading the charge, as we saw earlier.
Here's that exchange.
There goes Gelano in the field. A little slow motion that'll show you the effort on their faces. And during that exchange, which ultimately slows the team down a little bit, Hembry slipped over the top. And there goes Roger Young over the top also of a fading Pat Gelano. Hembry, you can see by the slight twitch of his elbows, putting a tremendous amount of effort into that last few yards to victory, in a very close one for second spot. Look, a little handling going on there with Cliff Halsey as he slips through, doesn't pick up his partner, but is trying to safely get through the traffic at the finish.
That could be significant there, that missed exchange, you see. And there's the winner of the sprint, Hembry on the right. And it looks like we're going to have another restart. We had a rider down. There's Leonard Harvey Nitz, walking away. Apparently he's not injured seriously. We'll keep posted on that development right there. The riders are circling around the track as we see the results from sprint number 4. Hembry, the winner there, picking up 5 more points for his team. Schwinn USA moving into second spot, picking up 3 big points. The leaders overall, still Can-Am Pro Team way out in front, 72 points. But look at that race for second spot. The Lehigh County Velodrome and the national champion Schwinn USA team duking it out. Only 2 points separating them at this point in the competition. We are back underway there with the gun up and off and running one more time. With another restart, we got 6 laps to go in the bike race. They rolled around a few laps there, and it's a double-point sprint coming up at the end. A very, very important sprint for these riders. They've been picking up 5 points for a win so far. It's going to be 10 big points for the last sprint of this 50-lap Madison.
We'll see all the top teams up there guarding the front, Brian, for sure. Really, really watching each other and positioning themselves for that all-important last lap sprint because, as you said, Brian, it's double points. None of these teams can afford to drop so many points by not getting a place in that final sprint.
Tucked on the back of the field, we see the team of Jones and Baxter is intact once again. Both of those riders that crashed earlier are back on the track. Coming down the closing laps of this first 50-lap Madison, these riders have been on the track since the start of the evening. They have not rested yet. They have been racing in 2 5-lap scratch races, then a 50-lap Madison, and they'll have a little bit of a brief rest going into some upcoming events later on, but they are really starting to get a little bit tired, and the strong teams are going to start coming to the front.
Look at the way that field is strung out, Brian. Those riders are going very, very fast. You can always tell how fast the field is going by the fact that they're strung out so far. And it looks like, to me, Paul Pearson trying to make a move now.
Pearson out in front, another very strong rider that we've talked about. His nickname, The Animal, is very descriptive. He knows only one way to go, and that's flat out. Paul Pearson of Team Alpine, and there's the bell, 1 lap to go. Coming up on the finish line for 1 lap, Pearson with a desperate attempt out in the front right now. Paul Pearson of Team Alpine, chased closely by Scott Hembry, the individual points race champion. Coming down the track, you see the Stars and Stripes jersey of Roger Young and Danny Van Hout. Pearson throws his partner Jackson into the fray. Jackson checking quickly over his shoulder to see where the competition coming from, and there's plenty of it. Look at him going 4 high in the turn, and Hembry has moved around, or Mole has moved around Jackson. Look at the sprint on the outside, very close. Mole throws his bike and takes that final sprint of the 50-lap Madison. Very exciting finish.
Let's take a look at this replay. You can really see now in this one, Brian, exactly how much jostling, how close the riders have to be to one another as they come around the final sprint. Remember, they're doing about 35 to 40 miles an hour. Pearson reaches up, grabs his partner's hand. Look at that hand sling. He's actually going much faster than Jackson. Jackson now lunging forward, pushing back as Pearson throws him at the front too. Jackson looks over his shoulder to check out the competition. He knows that he has to stay up there at the front and flat out now as he's out of the saddle and settling into his full sprint. And the riders bunched very tightly together. You can see that black jersey of Mole. He's got to have his front wheel somewhere where within striking distance so he can get clear. And way high up on the top is Gordon Singleton, one of the fastest men in the world, trying to come around. As you mentioned, it's very, very hard to come around from 4 high. And the man who was in second spot, Mole, proved that was the place to be as he came just off the wheel of a fading Ian Jackson to cross the line a length ahead. Very, very good sprint by Mike Mole on the left, a California rider who's placed in the United States National Madison Championships many, many times. A great, great bike rider, Mike Mole.
Here we have the results of the final sprint, the 5th and final sprint of the 50-lap Madison. Team Pacific, Mole winning 10 big points for his team. The Lehigh County Velodrome, Hugh Walton holding on for second spot. Singleton concluded. Team Pacific, the winners of the 50-lap Madison, and that big 10 points at the end certainly helped them. Here are the overall standings now. These are reflected from the points coming through from last night right on through the 50-lap Madison, which just concluded. The Can-Am Pro team still out in front. The Lehigh County Velodrome team has extended their lead by virtue of that good finish in that 50-lap Madison.
Now, Brian, let's have a look at some of the other races that the teams are competing in leading into the final 100-lap Madison. This is the 15-lap point race. One rider from each team rides in this event, scores points in each of 3 sprints. We're coming into the final sprint right now, and the first 2 sprints have really tied it all up, and it's coming down to this final sprint here to determine the winner in this 15-lap point race. And it's Paul Pearson out in front of Tom Pren of the Lehigh County Velodrome team. The finish almost a foregone conclusion, one of the few examples of a race that's won before the line. And there's Paul Pearson throwing his arms up, acknowledging that fact. And there he is on the left of your screen, Paul Pearson, the Animal, a very handsome guy, has won races all over the country and is feared on velodromes both here and abroad. Paul Pearson.
Quite a showboat rider there. Here you see the results now. The first column of points there on the left, the 10 points represents the number of points that the Alpine team collected in this particular race, and it handed them the victory, which counted as 14 points that's added to their cumulative total. And a little bit confusing there, but the first column of points, as you said before, is a points race. The column on the left represents the order of finish. The column on the right represents the points that they're totaled up and awarded for their team in the overall race.
Brian, let's take a look now at the missing out. 14 riders started this event. It's an interesting kind of event because the last rider that crosses the line each time is withdrawn from the race. We're down now to the final 4 riders. You can only see 3 on your screen. Leonard Nitz of the Avocet team, riding out of California, is way off the front. And these 3 riders now are coming to the finish line for the last man to be withdrawn in the missing out. They go down to 3 riders and they get a free lap before sprinting to the line. So one of these riders will be eliminated when they cross the finish line next time. Brian?
Here they come around the final turn. You can see them going 3 high. On the inside is McDonough, in the middle is Jackson, and on the outside is Hugh Walton, the Lehigh County Velodrome team. And it looks like McDonough is going to be the bridesmaid, and he is the last rider to be pulled out of the race, leaving the top 3 to roll around the track on a free lap, and then they'll have to sprint for first, second, and third. Now out in front, as we said, was Leonard Harvey Nitz, and left in is Jackson and Walton.
Now take a look at Nitz when the riders catch up to him. You can see he's got his right arm in a cast. He actually broke his wrist earlier in the race today, had a cast put on it by a doctor in the infield, and is now back on his bike racing. Incredible amount of fortitude by Leonard Nitz.
Nitz there being joined by the other 2, and they're in their free lap. They'll soon get the bell signifying 1 lap to go, and it looks like Harvey Nitz is going to sit up and concede the race. He must be experiencing quite a bit of pain in that wrist there, and he knows that in his strategy early on, he went out in the front and just held on out there in the front to assure himself of a top 3 finish here, and he is just going to be content with 3rd place because you can see the jostling back and forth, the wrist action and arm movement these riders have to use, and I think Nitz just feels like it's going to be too much pain. He's going to leave the sprint go for Jackson and Walton. Now Jackson trying to shut Walton down here down the backstretch. Jackson has got a little bit of a lead, and right here he's going to try to close the door on Walton, but no, Walton forces his way through. Look at that bumping and jostling going on right there. Hugh Walton putting a shoulder into Ian Jackson. Walton with the superior speed now and the superior position on the track, by virtue of coming through on the inside, looks one last time under his shoulder. He's going to come across the line and win this missing out, picking up some very important points for his team. Hugh Walton of the Lehigh County Velodrome team.
There he is on the right, one of the outstanding riders in North America, member of the Canadian Olympic team 2 times, and he's probably won, Brian, about 15 to 20 races this year. There he is with his hands off the bar, acknowledging the cheers of the crowd.
The results there, you see Walton's victory represents 7 more points for his team. Jackson picks up 5 for his team Alpine, and Leonard Harvey Nitz there working on 3 points for his team after breaking his wrist. The overall standings now you see, and look how close the Lehigh County Velodrome team is drawn within 4 points of the leaders, the Can-Am Pro team. As we come back to racing action, the sprint final is on the line, but you see here now Singleton, representing the Can-Am Pro team, has a chance to pick up points in this race, but there's no representative of the Lehigh County Velodrome team in this event. Let's go back and look at one of the sprint heats to see how these riders qualify for this sprint final.
Brian, each one of those 3 riders that we just saw on the line had to qualify through one of 5 heats held earlier on. The winner of each heat, or one of 3 heats, excuse me, and the winner of each heat qualifies for that final. Now this is the second heat that we're watching here as a replay. Up in front is Jimmy Alvord, the Pennsylvania State Sprint Champion. They jockey around quite a bit, stay high on the track. And remember, Roger Young, who you see down there on the bottom with the Stars and Stripes jersey, was the qualifier. So watch the action of Roger Young and how he handles his bike.
Jackson there moves the field up the track. A lot of jockeying for position here. It's like a chess game at high speed. You can see the positions constantly changing. Leonard Harvey Nitz again has sort of taken himself out of the action. He's in this heat, but he's way back in the back there, sort of watching everybody else. All this maneuvering around is not doing his wrist any good. Out in front right now, it's James Joseph of the Guyana team there, number 4, who competed in the Olympic Games in Moscow. The only one of 2 riders, his teammate, and they competed in the Olympic Games. Now Joseph is leading it out, but there's Roger Young right on his wheel in that slipstream position. Look at the maneuvering of Joseph there. He's trying to swing Roger Young up the track. Right now it's pretty much a 2-man race between James Joseph going into that last turn and to the line there, and Roger Young is going to steam around the outside.
Look at the lunging of Roger Young and this flexing of his arms and shoulders. Cycling is very much a sport for the entire body. It's not just the legs, as most people think, and these riders have developed upper torsos, as you can see from Roger Young. Really a beefy rider, a guy who's got tremendous leg as well as arm power.
Now we have the sprint final on the line, and Roger Young representing his team there and having won that second heat that we just saw. In the front is young Sean Wallace. Now, Sean Wallace, a youngster, as we said, he's 17 years old from Great Britain, and he is up there in the front right now. It's a 3-lap event, and this sprint final is going to pick some big points. Now, the situation we talked about before was that the Lehigh County Velodrome team had closed to within 4 points of the leaders, the Can-Am Pro team of Singleton and Halsey, but they are not represented in this event, and it looks like all the work that they did to get so close to the leaders in points, it could go right down the drain, because the least number of points that Singleton can get right now, even if he finishes dead last, which is not a likely possibility, is 6. So they're going to go right back out to a 10-point lead at the end of this event at the very worst.
We've got a real interesting race developing here. Roger Young and Gordon Singleton watching each other very, very carefully. Wallace, a young rider, an unknown quantity, sort of way back in the back. Young and Singleton not too concerned about him at all. Singleton once in a while checking over his shoulder, but both Roger and Gordon are accomplished sprinters. They're very, very fast, known throughout the world for their speed and sprint ability, as a matter of fact. And they're watching each other, the crowd fascinated by this. You can see there's about 3,000 to 4,000 spectators here at the Lehigh County Velodrome tonight.
Young has moved Singleton into the lead now. That's a bit of a surprise. It looked like he was trying to control this. But now Singleton, but look at, there goes Sean Wallace with a real devastating attack right at the bell. Sean Wallace takes off while Singleton and Young were watching each other. Look at this youngster go. Sean Wallace riding perhaps the race of his life out there right now, holding off 2 of the best sprinters on this side of the Atlantic Ocean. He's just a youngster, only 17 years old. Singleton and Young coming like rockets down the backstretch right now. Is it going to be long enough? It's hard to tell if Wallace has made the right move at the right time right now. Look at Singleton closing that gap with Young right on his wheel. The line is coming up, but Wallace is going to hold him off and win this sprint final. A very big surprise.
What an incredible move by Wallace. That was really something. You know, these 2 seasoned veterans, champions, looking at each other, spending all the time concerned about which one of them is going to win the race, and there goes Wallace just sneaking out from behind, really accelerating fast. Even now, after he's gone, Young and Singleton are just pretty much looking at each other. He was the winner.
17-year-old Sean Wallace. What a tale he'll have to tell when he goes home to Great Britain, beating the Pan American and Commonwealth Games gold medal winner Gordon Singleton in a sprint. There are the results. Wallace the winner, Singleton in second spot with 10 points. Roger Young picks up 6th. So with just the 100-lap Madison to go, Gordon Singleton and Cliff Halsey have a solid hold on first place. Earlier, Dave talked to them about tonight's race and what their strategy might be.
What are you really going to be thinking about tonight? Who particularly are you going to be watching?
Well, particularly Young and Van Hout. Ian Jackson and his partner are going to be also trying to get a lap. That's really their main chance in winning the race.
Gordon, what about you? I guess you're going to be looking to rack up the points in the sprints, right?
Oh, definitely. We got to think that way and just hang on and make sure nobody gets a lap on us. Really, I don't think anybody's going to get a lap, you know, and everybody was saying, you know, today, oh, tonight's going to be longer and harder. It's 25 laps longer than it was last night, so we're going to be right in there.
Who's going to be on top at the end of the night tonight?
We are.
Okay. Guess who? You'll see. AMF.
Gordon Singleton. He said nobody would lap the field, and that's in fact the case. With 22 laps to go in the 100-lap Madison, they are still the leaders, 103 points out in front by 12. The standings haven't changed at all through the first 75 laps or so of this race, and there we have the bell coming up on the 8th sprint in the bike race. Tom Prin of the Lehigh County Velodrome team out in front. Now this team is making a serious bid for victory here, as over the top goes Roger Young. Roger Young heading down into the final turn, trying to pick up some points for his team. The battle for second, third, and in fact even the lead in this race is incredible. Roger Young way out in front. He's going to take that sprint, followed by Team Pacific right there.
And the replay, we've got Tom Prin out in front with Roger Young storming up fast from behind. Watch the speed of that man, Roger Young. He puts a tremendous amount of effort into every sprint that he does. He's coming up very, very fast on Tom Prin, just going right around the side of him. Look at the way he's lunging his body over the bike, struggling very hard, but he's got easily a victory over Tom Prin. with still 3/4 of a lap to go. Roger Young, one of the best sprint riders and Madison riders in the United States. There he is on the right again with teammate Danny Van Hout, 2 times U.S. National Madison champions.
Here are the results from sprint number 8. You see Roger Young's victory there reflected with 5 more points for his team. Hembry comes in for second spot in the overall standings now, 103 to 91, 12 points separating the leaders from second place and 12 more points separating second from third. Dave, let's go back and take a look at some of the earlier sprints that led up to this situation.
Okay, Brian, remember we had 10 sprints, or we have 10 sprints in the 100-lap Madison. This is the first one with 90 laps to go. You see down there on the right is young junior rider Jeff Rutter powering his way off the front. Looking very, very strong, riding for Peugeot. Remember, he's been a member of the Junior World Championship team. And there comes that Roger Young again. We're going to see a lot, or we have seen an awful lot of Roger Young. And we see him typically in this position coming from second or third and just winning at the line. But this time is a time where Roger Young did not plan his timing right, was not able to catch Jeff Rutter. And there's your winner of the first sprint, Jeff Rutter of the Peugeot team.
A local boy doing good here in front of the home fans. Sprint number 2 now, we see out in front the Panasonic Shimano team rider Bruce Donaghy, and really quite a surprise that we haven't seen more from him up to this point. They're pretty well down in the standings, but here Donaghy is showing a flash of the form that's taken him to so many race victories this year. Donaghy out in front, picking up some very important points for his team, but look at that race for second spot in the black jersey crossing the line there. The winner of that sprint, the second sprint in the race, Donaghy for his team Panasonic Shimano.
And in sprint number 3 with 70 laps to go, it was Pat Gelano and Alan McCormick. Gelano from Trinidad and McCormick from Ireland, lunging, battling shoulder to shoulder with McCormick, getting the edge over Pat Gelano. 2 similar type aggressive riders, this one going to McCormick of AMF.
In sprint number 4, a similar situation with Bodycomb, 2 riders clear of the field. Bodycomb in the checkerboard jersey, passed on the outside there by the youngster from Great Britain, Sean Wallace. Wallace comes around him, timing his move just perfectly there. Bodycomb senses that the sprint to the line is over for him. He's going to hold on for second spot, but the winner is going to be Great Britain's young Sean Wallace.
And in that all-important sprint at the halfway point for double points with 50 laps to go, it was a real exciting affair with Danny Van Hout in the red and white jersey of the Schwinn USA team being overtaken in the last turn by Cliff Halsey, the pro from Northridge, California, but not quite. It was a very, very close call, but Halsey getting the victory.
Very difficult to see from this point of view right there in the bright glare of the lights at the finish line. Halsey taking the very important double points. At sprint number 6 with 40 laps to go, here comes Ian Jackson storming down the track right now. On the outside from him, his nemesis so far tonight is Hugh Walton. Those two have been duking it out all night long. Sitting back in third spot, McCormick from Ireland, but going clear one more time, notching another victory over Jackson, is the Lehigh County Velodrome's Hugh Walton right there.
And now coming into the 7th sprint with 30 laps to go, it's Hembry being passed again by Walton. Walton sprinting very, very well towards the end of this race. He comes by Hembry and just beats him at the line by a couple of centimeters. Hugh Walton of the Lehigh County Velodrome team again winning the 7th sprint.
The Velodrome team has really got to pile them on right now. They must get at least second. We're back in action right now. They must get at least second place in this sprint if they're to have a chance of overtaking the lead team of Halsey and Singleton, who have piled on points, 12 points separate them. The mathematical fact is right now the Velodrome team must get at least second. They're not going to do it right there. You saw the Lehigh County Velodrome team looked like 4th place. Let's go back and check it on the replay.
It was a very close sprint. There's the Lehigh County Velodrome team in 3rd spot right now. Remember, they had to get second in order to pile up the points. They weren't able to do it. Very, very close sprint, but it's Danny Van Hout of the Schwinn USA team there in the red and white jersey lunging for the line with about a quarter of a lap to go, passing Ron Heyman of the Panasonic Shimano team. Hugh Walton back there in 4th spot. Scott Hembry coming by in 4th spot. Hugh Walton fading back to 3rd. It's Danny Van Hout up in front. Walton now fading back to 4th spot, and that keeps them down in the point standings. But it's Danny Van Hout, the clear winner of that sprint.
So it looks like the lead is going to remain in the hands of Singleton and Halsey, the dark horses in this race. As we said earlier on, the people, local press and many of the other experts, so-called experts, didn't give them any chance of winning a 2-day event of this grueling nature. There you see the results of sprint number 9, Schwinn USA picking it up, Team Pacific piling on, and there they are, the overall standings. And it's very important to note here, 11 points are separating first from second. The maximum number of points that can be had in the final sprint is 10, so mathematically it's impossible for any team to overtake the leaders, Singleton and Halsey. But this last 10 laps of the race can be very, very exciting. A lot of cash bonuses on the line, a lot of money to be won, a lot of pride, especially for winning that final sprint of the race.
And there's little Alan McCormick, the leprechaun from Dublin, Ireland, who's been aggressive the entire night at the Lehigh County Velodrome. We've seen a lot of action from him, refusing to give up, even though they're way down in the point standings with no hope of winning the overall title. He and his partner, Pat McDonough, still aggressively fighting on in hopes at least of winning that last lap sprint.
The last lap sprint in this particular race is worth quite a bonus of money, and a lot of professionals racing against amateurs here, and all the bike riders are able to win money up to a certain point and still be declared amateurs if they are in fact amateurs at the time. Professionals, of course, no limit. They can win as much as they want. There are several professional riders in there, the Canadian Pro Champion, the American Pro Champion Cliff Halsey, who looks like he's going to be the winner of this bike race. McDonough still out in front, and there you hear the bell for a special prize. That is not the bell for the final lap. That bell is for a special cash prize that could be won by any of these riders. There you see McDonough out in front, and right behind him is Wallace, but the team of Wallace and Cameron, they're actually behind on laps right now. Here we see McCormick going for the cash with Wallace trying to tack on. He's actually behind the leaders right there, but it looks like McCormick is on his way to winning another cash prize here. The little leprechaun looking for his own pot of gold here on this side of the Atlantic Ocean.
They've been riding for quite a few laps now. They're in about 3 or 4 laps to go, and it's been a very, very hard test of these riders' endurance. And McCormick now perhaps showing the relative freshness of an endurance rider over a sprinter. McCormick still, in the closing laps of this race, able to go out there and put the pressure on, maintain a speed of about 30 to 35 miles an hour. There's very few riders that can do that, particularly after going through 9 sprints and a very, very grueling pace. But McCormick and his partner McDonough determined to try and win that last lap sprint.
Pat McDonough on the track right now, trying to hold off the charging field for the big prize money at the end of this race, and also for the pride involved in winning the final sprint of a 100-lap Madison. They've been racing out there for 3 hours. They're got to be getting tired, but pure adrenaline is keeping them going right now. There you see the upraised arm of Arthur Greenberg, the chief referee. It's 1 lap to go in the bike race. McDonough's out in front. Wallace, he comes around again now, but remember, he is a lap behind. He cannot sprint against these riders. Here, coming out of the field, the entire group sprinting desperately for this last lap in the bike race. Wallace is out in front. Everybody thinks he's going to be the winner. The riders behind know the fact. Look at the sprint coming from behind. Roger Young coming up from behind very fast right there. Sean Wallace crossing the finish line first, but in fact, it's going to be Roger Young picking up the true honors of winning that final sprint.
As we look at the replay, Brian, interesting thing happened here. Wallace is a young, inexperienced rider, not quite realizing exactly where he is on distance. He was precisely 1 lap behind the rest of the field, but feeling that he was still eligible to sprint on the last lap for both the points and the money involved. However, he was not officially allowed to do that. He did it anyway, and we're seeing him right now actually winning this bike race, with the exception that he was 1 lap down. But trying very, very hard is Wallace, but the real sprint is coming up from behind, led by Roger Young, who's storming out of that final turn. Look at again Roger Young, as he always does, lunging over his bike. He is officially the winner of the last lap sprint. Wallace raises his arm and doesn't find out until later that he was 1 lap down. Roger Young and Danny Van Hout. Roger Young winning the last lap sprint for the Schwinn USA team.
There's Sean Wallace, who probably now realizes that he was not the winner of the race, but you know, that competitive instinct just keeps him going. Here we see the results of the final sprint, and as you said, officially it is Roger Young. We saw it very clearly from here, and second place there to Walton and Friend, falling just a little short in their bid to take this Madison Cup championship. There you see the results of the 100-lap Madison itself, the winners of the Madison race, the 100-lap finale of this event, the Schwinn USA National Madison Champion team of Roger Young and Danny Van Hout. The Hembry-Mole team there coming on very strong, and maybe if this had been a 3-day event, it could have been a different result. The Lehigh County Velodrome team sliding in there in 3rd spot in this thing, and now overall we see the winners, and it's just announced to the crowd, the Can-Am Pro team, a very popular victory for the Canadian professional team of of Cliff Halsey and Gordon Singleton. Singleton there, the amateur champion of the Pan American Games, and his partner, the cash man, Cliff Halsey, the U.S. Pro Champion, on the left-hand side of your screen. A very popular victory for these two riders. Halsey receiving the accolades of the crowd, and we couldn't have produced a more popular winner. Dave, some final thoughts on this race.
It was really a fantastic 2 days, Brian. We did see the last night of competition here. Singleton and Halsey predicted before the events even started that they were going to be receiving the winner's bouquet at the end of the evening's performance tonight. And you can see Halsey and Singleton very, very happy. There's Halsey going around acknowledging the outstretched hands of the crowd. Halsey is one of the favorites here at the Lehigh County Velodrome. Brian?
So the winners of the 1980 Madison Cup are Gordon Singleton and Cliff Halsey. We hope you've enjoyed it. For Dave Charner, this is Brian Drever saying good night from the Lehigh County Velodrome in Trexlertown, Pennsylvania.